My hands still smelled like burnt coffee and cheap plastic from the busted Keurig in the server room the day they introduced Callie. They brought her in like she was a damn celebrity, hair blown out, heels clicking like she owned the floor already, clutching a leather-bound notebook she'd never fill. I was elbow deep in a network outage, third one that week, trying to reconfigure a patch someone else had butchered. Didn't even get a heads up she was coming, just looked up and there she was, bright-eyed, MBA smile, and introduced as Madison's mentee. They said that like it was a compliment. Like I wasn't in the middle of babysitting 3 product lines, cleaning up the CEO's broken promises to our biggest client, and rewriting Jenkins' configs in the dark because someone in sales clicked a phishing link that nuked half our internal scripts. But sure, let's add mentor to the list. Why not? I trained her anyway, because that's what I did. Because every fire that flared up in that place, I stomped out quietly. Because the men upstairs with their fake crisis voices and synergy slides knew I'd make it look easy. I gave her the lay of the land, from the dev queue nightmares to which client rep would cry if she mispronounced their product name. Taught her how not to panic when a release broke something we didn't even know we shipped. And she was smart. Too smart to be playing dumb when she accidentally CC'd the VP's son on one of our feedback reports. Too smart not to know her LinkedIn updates, thrilled to be joining a visionary team, would land in all the right inboxes. She soaked up everything I gave her, and still managed to make me feel like I was aging out of my own build. 6 years I gave to Arborn Systems. I was there before the Series A, before we even had swipe cards or health insurance. I debugged our first mobile release in a Motel 6 during a family funeral. I cried exactly once, when we survived a client threat to sue us into dust, and I realized I was the only one who even read the contract they were waving around. But none of that got me a seat at the summit. Every year, same story. It's more of a sales-forward event, they'd say, or we want a fresh face this year, or just silence. While I watched some glorified intern explain my dashboard charts like she invented data itself. By year 3, I stopped caring. By year 4, I started documenting everything. Quietly, thoroughly, like the tired old ops ghost I was becoming. I could tell you exactly which microservice broke after a full moon. I could quote error logs like poetry. I was the duct tape behind their IPO dreams. So yeah, I stayed too long. Stayed through the pivot to SAW S, the pivot back to consultative solutions, whatever that means, and the slow rod of watching every shortcut get rewarded. I kept hoping someone would notice that I was the one keeping the lights on. But in places like Arborn, the only time they see you is when something goes wrong. Which brings me to this. If you've ever been the one quietly keeping the ship afloat while everyone else drinks champagne on the upper deck, this story's for you. And if you're listening and not subscribed yet, I mean, come on. Don't be like my leadership team. A click costs nothing, but it tells the team we're not just screaming into the void. And hey, toss us a like if you've ever debugged something at 2 a.m. with tears in your eyes and a frozen burrito in your lap. Anyway, Callie came in shining like a new coin. I gave her everything, walked her through our client support systems, our patching workflow, even my little script for recovering a borked analytics dashboard on the fly. I told myself it was legacy building, passing the torch. But deep down, I knew I was being replaced. The signs were all there. Leadership started saying things like delegation builds resilience. I got pulled from client briefings. My update meetings became email only. And Callie? She was refreshing the company's image, whatever the hell that means. She started hosting brown bag sessions on client empathy and internal trust. Someone actually clapped. I almost vomited. Still, I showed up. Still, I fixed things. Still, I kept her from walking face first into production bugs she couldn't even spell. Until one day I walked into the break room and saw the new org chart taped to the fridge like a daycare art project. My name, nowhere near leadership. Callie's, right next to the VP. I stared at that printout for a long time, thought about the years, the nights, the code. Then I grabbed a stale donut, walked back to my desk, and kept typing. Because sometimes you don't rage, you don't cry, you don't throw a fit, you just take notes. They called it a strategic shift, said it over lukewarm conference coffee with that grinning tension HR types wear like perfume. We want you to step back and empower the next wave, said Craig, the director of product. Man who once asked me what a cache was. This isn't about replacing you, it's about elevation. Stewardship, letting new voices shine. New voices. Translation, Callie needs your notes, your slide deck, and your patience. They framed it like a blessing. Like I'd been knighted with the holy task of handing over my life's work to someone who still didn't understand the difference between staging and prod. And the kicker? They made me schedule the handoff meetings myself. Her up to speed on the summit deck, they said. She's excited to lead. The summit deck, my summit deck. The one I'd been refining since January, test cases, flow charts, back-end latency insights, risk contingencies mapped with obsessive precision. I'd spent 2 years building the trust that made those numbers glow. And now I was supposed to train someone who once referred to our CI/CD pipeline as that pushy robot thing. Callie showed up to the first session late, holding an iced matcha and a half-eaten chia bar. She waved like we were sorority sisters at a brunch. So excited to do this with you, Mads, she said. No notebook, no laptop, just vibes. I walked her through the architecture slide by slide, pausing every time she blinked like she was buffering. I explained the client personas, how the Northwell account would ask about GDPR, even though they barely followed email protocol. I handed her a cheat sheet I'd made after 3 years of sitting through investor Q and As. She flipped it over, nodded, and tucked it in her purse like it was a brunch receipt. On the third handoff session, she asked if we could keep it high level because she had a ton of touchpoints today. She meant happy hour with a partner at Viro Capital. I found out later they were dating. I started noticing things around the office. My name disappearing from threads I used to anchor, forwarded for awareness where there used to be direct asks. A Slack emoji reaction to my weekly metrics update, just a single fire emoji from Callie, no comment, no questions. Then came the team meeting. Craig cleared his throat like he was about to propose marriage. As part of our evolution, we're honoring Madison's incredible groundwork by making room for Callie's fresh perspective. Madison will be transitioning out over the next week. Please join us in celebrating her legacy. Legacy, a word they use when they're gutting you with a smile. They wheeled in a sheet cake. White frosting, blue piping, and a font that looked like someone stabbed a Sharpie into frosting. It said, "Thank you for laying the groundwork." I stood there holding a plastic fork while Callie posed next to me, hand on my shoulder like I was her retiring aunt. Everyone clapped. Some people cried, probably because they thought I was dying. I smiled, said nothing, not a single speech, not a single tear. But something deep inside me, something I used to call loyalty, went still, like a pilot light flickering out in a dark, empty house. They gave me a branded duffel bag as a parting gift. Inside it was a water bottle, a candle, and a card signed by people who had ghosted me all month. The day I left, I walked out without looking back. Not at the poster on the wall with our fake mission statement. Not at the desk I'd organized with surgical precision. Not at the inbox they'd lock me out of by noon. I didn't even take the farewell cupcakes. What they didn't realize was this: I wasn't leaving with nothing. I'd written parts of that platform in my sleep. I'd patched things they didn't even know were broken. And years ago, during a funding panic, I'd asked for a clause. A quiet, buried clause no one ever mentioned again. That clause didn't care about emojis, or HR candles, or who wore the best blazer. It cared about contribution, technical authorship, original IP stabilization. They handed me cake. I walked out holding the match. I sat at my kitchen table surrounded by half-packed boxes, unopened farewell gifts, and a cat that refused to acknowledge my unemployment. The exit packet from Arborin was 20 pages of boilerplate, smugly stapled. HR called it a smooth offboarding experience, which is corporate for you can't sue us, right? I flipped past the non-disparagement clause, the severance breakdown, the NDA, nothing I hadn't seen before. And then I hit page 17. That's where it blinked at me like a glitch in the code. Clause 9.4c. In the event of significant platform restructuring or personnel transition, following original stabilization of core architecture, as defined in Appendix D, intellectual property rights associated with said stabilization shall revert to the named party, provided said party no longer maintains employment, salary, or board seat within Arborin Systems. Appendix D was a document I'd written myself. During the last funding crunch, back when the site was crashing under load and the board was threatening layoffs, I saved the entire backend with a weekend-long fix-a-thon and a lot of pizza grease. I hadn't asked for a bonus. I asked for protection, quietly, just in case. They gave it to me because they were desperate. Then they forgot until now. I read the clause 5 times, heart rate flatlining. It was clean, specific, dated, and signed. I cross-checked it with the version in my Dropbox and smiled. Somewhere between restructuring and fresh voices, they'd handed me the keys and forgot to lock the door. I didn't scream. I didn't text anyone. I didn't even pour a drink. I just quietly closed the packet, deleted the Arborin Slack app, and archived every internal thread I'd been lurking in out of habit. Watching the icon disappear from my phone felt like amputating a phantom limb I'd been dragging around for years. Then came the Investor Summit email. Subject line: excited to celebrate our growth together. They wanted me to attend as a valued alum. Said there'd be a cocktail hour and a legacy founder wall with digital portraits. I pictured mine glitching next to a Callie quote about modern leadership. I hit RSVP and selected no. But then I did something else. I booked a room at the same hotel, not the suite they used to give me when I handled the post-demo fire drills, just a regular room with a view of the fountain and the lobby bar. That's all I needed, just the bar. I wasn't there to crash anything. I wasn't there to make a scene. I was there to watch. 'Cause here's the thing about stepping away quietly. People assume you're done. They think your silence means surrender. But silence is also space. And I had more of it now than ever before. I'd been there duct tape, now I was gone. Let's see how glossy the pitch looks without me plugging the leaks. I packed light. Just a carry-on with a clean blazer, a lipstick shade called Resignation Red, and the original signed clause tucked into the sleeve of a book I'd pretend to read at the. Let Callie stand on stage. Let Craig fumble the Q&A. Let the investors ask technical questions no one prepped for. I'd sit quietly, bourbon in hand, smiling politely at the chaos I didn't cause. I wasn't coming to save them. I was just coming to watch them try to save themselves. Not my circus, not anymore. The bar was dim, all marble and mirrored brass, tucked off the side of the grand ballroom like a secret passage for the disillusioned. I sat 2 stools in from the corner, perfect line of sight to the flat screen feed piping in the main stage. Nobody else seemed to notice it. Too busy networking, too busy pretending their lanyards were medals. I swirled my bourbon once, then applied another swipe of lipstick with the precision of a woman who had nowhere to be and nothing to lose. The announcer's voice buzzed through the speakers. And now, please welcome the Arborn Systems executive team to present their exciting next chapter. There she was, Callie, in a white blazer and matching confidence, leading the pack like she'd just invented software. Craig trailed behind her, trying not to sweat through his shirt. A junior engineer I didn't recognize fidgeted with a clicker like it might explode. They lined up under the hot lights, every one of them blinking just a little too fast. "We've got it from here," Callie said, smiling into the mic like she'd practiced it in the mirror. A scattered applause followed. I clinked my glass against the bar's lacquered wood and turned my chair a half-inch to the left. Just enough. First slide loads. Wrong deck. I didn't blink. They'd named it Final Thisone 3, PPTX. I'd seen it in the shared drive 2 weeks ago, an outdated version from a marketing intern who quit in March. Callie kept talking like nothing was wrong. "That's the first mistake. Never keep talking when the slide says something else." She said record client retention while the chart showed churn. She clicked. The next slide crashed into a rendering error. She laughed, said, "Guess the demo gods are mad at us." Craig leaned into the mic, already sweating through his collar. "Let's try the demo live." Oh, sweet mercy. They hadn't rehearsed the live build because it required tokenized access to the sandbox environment, which they didn't have, which I had always managed. They tried anyway. The app loaded to a maintenance page I'd written 6 months ago after a corrupted API call nuked the sandbox during a client trial. I never removed the password block, never told anyone I'd coded a fallback redirect. The crowd shifted. A few phones lit up. Callie tried to recover. She said, "The backend code here was a little outdated. We're working on, don't." She should not have said that. She called my code outdated. The backend I built while sick with the flu, typing through cough syrup in fury. The system I stitched together while Craig was golfing and Callie was still learning what an endpoint was. She called that outdated. I sipped my drink and waited. A voice piped up from the front row. "Can you clarify which version of the architecture you're using now? The one that handled the regional scaling from Q4? Callie blinked. Craig stared at the clicker like it might give him the answer. She said, "We, migrated off that last quarter." A lie. One of the investors frowned. "That contradicts what was in the pre-read." Another voice, "Where's the compliance audit record for that switch?" Callie's smile started to slip. The junior engineer stepped forward, whispered something in her ear, and immediately looked like he regretted it. The stage lights made it all worse. There's a particular kind of sweat panic that only hits people who have never bombed before. They think they can pivot. They think charm will save them. It never does. Not when the lights are hot and the questions are cold. Behind the bar, the bartender paused in his towel polishing ritual and glanced at the screen. "Yikes," he muttered. I smiled. "It's just the beginning." I hadn't sabotaged a single thing, didn't change a line of code, didn't pull a plug, I just didn't warn them. Leave a post-it on the staging server. Didn't ping the team thread when I saw the wrong build timestamp. Sometimes the purest revenge is nothing at all. Let gravity do the rest. Let hubris meet live Q&A, let her choke on the stage I built while they pushed me off it. She said they had it from here. Well, good luck with that. First came the buzzing. A light tremor against the lacquered bar from the phone I'd faced screen down, like a landmine I wasn't ready to disarm. Then came the cascade. Buzz, buzz, pause, buzz, buzz, buzz. I flipped it over like I was checking the weather. "VP Sam, Madison, urgent. Where's the fallback deck? Callie, did you touch the sandbox?" "Nothing is loading. I thought you left it clean." "Craig, they're asking about the compliance trail. The doc is gone from Drive. Where is IT?" "Unlisted number, this is the stage coordinator. Are you still nearby? We might need a quick fix." Quick fix. The phrase nearly made me laugh out loud, like I was the hotel plumber, here to unclog their toilet of lies. I flagged the bartender. "Another?" he asked, nodding to the half-finished bourbon. "Double this time," I said, sliding the glass toward him. The feed on the wall behind us flickered, then returned to a wide shot of the summit stage. Callie was visibly sweating now, makeup sliding south, voice cracking mid-buzzword. Craig was whispering violently at someone off mic. Intern with the clicker looked like he might cry. The bartender poured slowly. "Rough day for them," I shrugged. They were warned. The texts kept coming. "Sam again, do you still have access to the compliance binder you kept? Please, we're live." "Callie, they think I made up the KPI growth from Q2. Did you not upload the newest graph?" "Craig, the system's rollback protocol failed." "Did you change the scripts before you left? Be honest." "Oh, Craig, sweet, nervous Craig. Change anything. I just never handed over the parts they didn't ask for. If you don't know where the panic button is, maybe don't set the building on fire." Back when I wrote the compliance report, I color-coded everything, highlighted the liabilities, the undocumented patches, the short-term hacks disguised as long-term vision. I submitted it to legal. Twice. No one responded. Callie told me it was a little doom and gloomy and that investors didn't want anxiety. They wanted optimism. I gave them optimism. By leaving, more buzzing. Callie, please. You said you wanted a clean break. Don't do this. Ah, there it was. Not can you help or can we talk? Just don't do this. Like silence was a weapon. Like my absence was sabotage. I leaned back in the bar stool, letting the bourbon settle like molasses down my throat. The hum of conversation behind me grew quieter as people trickled out of the ballroom in search of open bars or escape routes. I opened the last message. Callie, Madison, I need the IP failover script. Please, I'm being told we're violating disclosures. I stared at it, need, that word, that assumption, that dependency. They had replaced me in every title, every org chart, every photo on the website. But here they were back in my inbox, screaming into the void I left behind. The thing about being a ghost is that eventually they realize who the house really belonged to. The bartender set down the new drink. You good? Never better, I said, raising the glass. They were flailing, flipping through folders they didn't understand, digging through drive versions like archaeologists looking for a sacred text they'd once called irrelevant. None of them knew where the fallback deck lived, because it never lived on their machines. I'd built it in a separate repo, isolated from their meddling hands. Labeled it something boring on purpose. Q2 Alt Client Assets 2021 Review Final PDF. I'd shared it with legal once, and then revoked access when they streamlined permissions. They could have asked me then, but they didn't, so now? Now I sat in a bar not 50 feet from their public unraveling, watching their panic grow pixel by pixel on the screen. I wasn't smiling. I wasn't gloating. I was still, perfectly still. Like a pressure valve sealed shut just before the engine gives out. Like a power line humming through winter silence. Let them buzz, let them scramble. I wasn't saving them. I was watching them drown in the safety net they cut themselves. The air changed the moment the cue and a started. Not just in the ballroom, on the bar floor too. The TV's tinny speaker gave everything a warped, surreal quality, like listening to a funeral through an old drive-through intercom. A man in a navy suit stood up on screen and cleared his throat. His voice didn't rise or fall, just stayed steady, surgical. Can someone walk us through the audit logs from Q1? Specifically, how you tracked platform-side GDPR compliance post-infrastructure migration? Boom. You could see it hit Callie like a brick to the sternum. Her smile wobbled. She looked at Craig. Craig looked at the junior engineer. The junior, God bless his sweating soul, stepped forward like a man headed for the firing squad. He mumbled something about legacy dependencies and original warehouse logic still being in use. Said the logs were being updated, which in compliance speak is code for we didn't do it. Someone else in the audience raised a hand, voice sharp as glass. Wait, you're still using the original ETL pipeline? Another investor added. I thought the data lineage documentation was migrated. That was promised in the Q3 call. Callie opened her mouth, closed it, reopened it. Then, like a death rattle, she said, we're building on Madison's older framework, which has some technical debt, and there it was. The scapegoat play. Call the bones brittle, blame the ghost who left them. Pretend the foundation wasn't holding the whole house together when your team started yanking out support beams for aesthetics. But the junior engineer kept talking. God love him. She actually had a stabilization clause tied to the IP. I think, he said, eyes darting between Callie and Craig. If she's no longer employed, I'm not sure we technically, own the lineage scripts anymore. The room shifted. Not just the energy, the camera actually caught it. The lead investor, silver hair, eyes like frostbite, tilted his head, leaned down to whisper to someone next to him, and stood up and walked off screen. Just like that, didn't even say a word, just left back at the bar, my drink sat untouched. I didn't need to sip, I just needed to breathe it in. That moment, that single, frozen second when they realized what they didn't read was more intoxicating than anything behind that bar. They didn't read the clause, of course they didn't. Why would they? It wasn't flashy. It wasn't innovative. It was tucked at the bottom of a dock during a round of desperate negotiations 3 years ago, when the servers were crashing, and the board was panicking, and I was the only one who stepped up with a fix. The clause was a reward they assumed I'd never cash. Clause 9.4c stated, in dry legalese, that the foundational logic, original code, and architecture related to platform stabilization reverted to me upon my departure if the company ever underwent significant structural change. Guess what? Forcing me out, reassigning all data oversight, and renaming the product suite as version 2.0, that structural change. Their Q3 migration never happened. The dashboards, still mine. The audit trails, still routed through scripts with my name on them. And now here they were, on stage, realizing that every assurance they gave those investors was built on ownership they never retained. You could see it ripple across the audience. One investor checking their packet, another whispering. A third typing something into a phone, probably pulling up the clause themselves if they had a decent lawyer. Back on stage, Callie froze completely. Craig tried to recover with a joke. We're all still learning, he said, chuckling. No one laughed, no one even blinked. The TV feed cut momentarily as the camera followed the lead investor leaving the room. In that brief silence, the bartender exhaled and muttered, "That didn't look good." I finally picked up my glass and took a slow sip. In my head, I heard the paper sliding out of my printer 3 years ago when I filed that clause. I remembered legal's half-hearted nod. I remembered Craig asking if I really needed it. I remembered saying, "You'll thank me later." They didn't thank me. They remembered me now. I watched the screen blink back to Callie's pale face, still searching for a lifeline in a sea of finance sharks. I set my glass down and whispered, just for me, "Checkmate, you clueless bastards." The message came just after I'd set my glass down, the condensation ring still fresh and perfect on the bar. Unknown number, no subject, just 2 lines. They just imploded on stage. "Are you free? My car is out front." I stared at it. There were no pleasantries, no names, no emojis, no polite capital letters, just blunt precision. The kind that didn't need introductions. Only one person ever texted me like that, our lead investor. The man with the coldest eyes in the room and the warmest checkbook. I didn't reply. I just stood, smoothed the wrinkles from my blazer, and placed a folded 20 under the lip of my empty glass. The bartender didn't even ask, just nodded like he knew the war was over. The corridor outside the bar was a velvet throat of noise, loud, muffled, directionless. Someone from catering sprinted past me with a tray of untouched crab cakes. A woman in stilettos stormed into a supply closet and started sobbing loud enough to echo. The hallway smelled like nerves and perfume and broken dreams. And then I passed the summit room. The doors were still cracked open, like a wound trying to scab over mid-bleed. Inside, it was chaos. Callie was slumped in a chair near the stage stairs, face streaked in mascara, a tissue balled in her hand like it might save her. The CEO was pacing, flanked by 2 stone-faced board members, voice sharp enough to cut drywall. Craig stood by the AV cart, mumbling to someone on a headset, trying to unmess a moment that was already fossilized in memory. No one noticed me. That was the beauty of being underestimated. When they push you to the edges, they forget to check the shadows. I walked past the room like I'd never even heard of Arborn Systems. Just another hotel guest with places to be and time to spare. The lobby was quieter, colder. I stepped outside into the dusk air, where black sedans lined the valet like chess pieces mid-game. One of them, a sleek black car, windows tinted like obsidian, had its rear passenger door open. Waiting, a tall man in a charcoal coat leaned against the hood, not looking at his phone, not talking, just watching the glass doors. When he saw me, he nodded once. That was all. I didn't run, didn't strut. Just walked with the calm of someone who no longer had anything to prove. Every step I took away from that building felt like a pressure valve hissing open in my chest. As I reached the car, I glanced once through the glass facade behind me. Callie was still inside, still sobbing, still surrounded by people trying to fix what was already shattered. A PR rep gestured wildly at her reporter. Someone else held up a packet with pages falling out. The CEO was slamming his palm on a table. None of them looked out. None of them saw me, and that was perfect. I slid into the leather seat and pulled the door shut behind me with a soft, final click. The silence inside the car felt almost holy, like stepping into a cathedral built from restraint and consequence. The man beside me didn't say hello, didn't offer a hand. He simply adjusted his cufflink and said, "Well, that was predictable." I looked straight ahead. "I didn't sabotage a thing." "I know," he said. "That's what made it brilliant." The engine hummed to life. We pulled away from the hotel just as the stage lights behind us dimmed for the closing reception. They'd toast without me. They'd spin stories, patch the press release, draft a statement about strategic evolution. But none of that would matter now. I didn't steal the spotlight. I just took the power and left the light on behind me. The ride was quiet at first, like the moment right before a circuit reconnects and the hum comes back to life. I didn't fill the space with small talk. Neither did he. The city passed us in soft smears of light. People on sidewalks, horns in the distance, a delivery bike weaving through traffic like it had somewhere important to be. Meanwhile, I sat beside the man who held the purse strings to everything Arborn once thought it owned. He didn't ask what happened in the ballroom. Didn't mention Callie, or Craig, or the meltdown now being dissected in real time by a dozen attendees on social media. He didn't even blink when his phone lit up with a string of notifications. The man radiated stillness like a chess master in mid-check. Instead, he turned slightly toward me and asked one thing. "What do you want?" That was it. Not "Are you okay?" Not "Can you help us fix this?" Just "What do you want?" And somehow that made it easier to answer. "I want a spin-off," I said, "the core platform, the original IP, backend logic, and the compliance engine. Stripped down. Clean. Mine." He nodded. "New cap table," I added. "No legacy board seats. I picked the team. We build lean, private, and quiet for at least 12 months. Equity?" he asked like he already knew. "Majority retained. Founders class. I'll accept dilution for strategic money, but I want veto power on hires above director." He gave a small nod, eyes forward again. "And the clause? Already enforceable," I said. "They gave it up the minute they pushed me out and pivoted the structure." Clause 9.4, C triggers full reversion rights under technical lead stabilization. It's airtight. Another pause. Then, I'll have legal confirm, but I trust you. It wasn't a compliment, it was just a fact. The car turned down a quieter street, the kind lined with buildings still lit at 9 p.m. The kinds where real decisions get made after the cocktail dresses come off and the deals start whispering. He scrolled through his phone once, reading something that made his jaw tighten slightly, then set it face down on the seat between us. They're calling it sabotage, he said flatly. I met his gaze. I didn't touch a thing, I just didn't stop them. He smiled faintly, not out of amusement but respect. Good, and that was the thing. I didn't steal anything. I didn't hack them, didn't leak a doc, didn't plant a virus or crash a server. I built something that worked. And when they chose to treat that as disposable, I simply stopped protecting them from their own ignorance. The platform didn't collapse because I left. It collapsed because they never learned how to carry it. The rest of the ride was logistics. He told me who'd be on the legal call tomorrow, what paperwork I'd need to review, that his team would handle the separation language carefully, quiet, professional, no flames. We want this clean, he said. No need to salt the earth. Just take the land and build something better. I nodded. It was the only revenge I ever wanted anyway, not a bonfire, just clarity. No one would remember the summit meltdown for long, but they would remember the product that came next. The one without bloat, without buzzwords. The one that worked because it was built by someone who gave a damn. When the car finally pulled up to my apartment, he didn't offer to walk me in. Didn't reach for handshake, just said, next time we write the rules first. I opened the door, paused, and looked back. They should have read what I wrote the first time. He gave a nod like a man sealing a deal without ink. I stepped into the night, lighter than I'd felt in years. Not vindicated, just ready. The press release dropped on a Tuesday morning just before the markets opened. It was deliberate, timed for the people who actually mattered, the ones with money in play and ears to the ground. The headline was simple, unflashy, and impossible to ignore. Viro Capital announces strategic backing of new S venture led by former Arboran architect. No preamble, no fluff, no spin, just facts. The subhead hit harder, founder-led platform to leverage stabilized core infrastructure, rebuilt from the original. My name was in bold, right under the photo they'd taken the day before. No blazer. Just a charcoal shirt, arms crossed in front of the building's glass facade. The kind of image that said, I don't need to prove a damn thing anymore. Callie's name was nowhere, neither was Craig's or Sam's. Arborn wasn't even mentioned beyond a footnote buried in paragraph 6, original framework contributor at prior enterprise platform. By noon, the dominoes had started to fall. Arborn's valuation took its first dip. Then came the analyst downgrades. Then the customers started calling, asking when the new platform would be available, asking if my team was hiring. Someone leaked a screenshot of the investor call. Craig hunched over a table, Callie's seat conspicuously empty. No one had to say what everyone already knew. The heart had been ripped out. And it was still beating in a new building under a new name with the same code pulsing beneath its skin. We didn't do a launch party. No ribbon cutting. No LinkedIn hype video. Just a clean site, waiting list, and a white paper that laid out, line by line, how we'd build trust before features. I handpicked every engineer. No evangelists, no vision people, just builders. People who knew what it meant to work in the dark and still ship something that didn't break at scale. The sign outside the new office was temporary, just vinyl letters slapped on glass, but it was mine. All of it, the keys, the architecture, the vision. And this time, I wasn't handing it over. That afternoon, I stepped outside to take a call, sunlight bouncing off the windows, and checked my phone. One new email. Subject line, can we talk? From Craig Fletcher at Arborn Systems.com. I didn't even need to open it. I already knew the tone. Desperate professionalism. Faux humility. Probably something like we've always respected your leadership, or this situation has revealed opportunities for mutual alignment. I stared at it for a full 10 seconds, and I swiped left and tapped delete. No drama, no response, just gone. I slid the phone into my pocket and looked up at the building, our building. Engineers inside were already sketching out sprint plans on glass walls, sleeves rolled up, music playing low, the hum of momentum, of something real finally taking form. They told me to step aside, to make room, to let go, so I did, and I built something better. Appreciate you sticking around, you legends of the break room. Subscribe for more chaos. Let's make your old managers spill their coffee in fear.